Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of Joshua T. Lindsey TV. Today I would like to talk about ableism, but before we get into that, I would like to say that if you have any questions about my disability, this show, or anything that you would like me to do in this show, please comment below and like and or subscribe to Joshua T. Lindsey TV. That way, I will know how you are receiving the videos, whether you like them, whether you want me to continue in this variety type format, or whether you would like me to focus in on something of interest to you. Now, not all my videos are going to be focused on one thing, because I think that is limiting, and it is my channel, so I would like to have the freedom to do what I want to do. But if you would like me to focus in on a certain topic for a couple or a few episodes, I would be happy to do that. Also, I would be happy to answer any questions about my disability, as long as they are appropriate for a general audience. Basically, that they do not violate basic standards of decency. But I think that openness about a physical disability such as mine is better than for people having to look at me and have questions and guess at the answers. And I heard one of my fellow disabled persons say that on an episode of Forensic Files, and I agree with her that it is better to answer the questions and be open about your disability rather than be closed-minded and make people guess, because a lot of times they are wrong or misguided, and they get a misguided idea of what a disability is. Now I would like to address the issue of ableism. From what I can understand, this philosophy or way of thinking involves two separate tenets, or at least two separate tenets. A, that a person with a disability is of less value than a person without a disability, and B, that a person with a disability is worse off than a person without a disability, in that society makes him feel, or her feel, that if he or she, that is the person with a disability, had the abilities that the person without a disability had, they would be better off and have a better life with advantages. Now, I totally can see where people are coming from when they talk about the first tenet of ableism, And I do not feel that there is any difference between the value of a person with a disability and a person without a disability. However, where the problem arises is that disabled people, like I mentioned in the second tenet, believe that a disabled person should not be socially coerced into liking or preferring to have the abilities that a non-disabled person has, as opposed to what he doesn't have as a person with a disability. Now, as far as being of more value and having a better life, that is a value judgment, and I disagree with that. But saying that a person with a disability should not want to have the abilities that a person without a disability has is frankly insane. A popular argument, such as that put forth by Lindsey Eisland in her book The Disabled God, is the notion that disabled people are at a disadvantage because of social barriers that are put up in a concerted and purposeful effort to make them disabled and at a disadvantage. And that, furthermore, if those social barriers were taken away, the disabled person would no longer be disabled or feel the effects of his disability or her disability. Now, I agree that there are certain things in society that make it harder for people with disabilities. But for the most part, I do not believe that these barriers were put up in a concerted, open, and purposeful manner in order to make disabled people feel less valuable or put them at a disadvantage when compared with walking people. Some of these barriers include curbs, stairs, inaccessible housing, and inaccessible amenities. Now, from an unknown source, I recently heard that 1 out of every 8 people has a physical disability of some kind. This means that people with disabilities are in the minority from whatever viewpoint you come from. And that I don't believe there was a conspiracy among walking people to keep disabled people down by putting these social barriers in place. And I do not believe the walking people seek to mock the people with disabilities or to hold themselves up as being better because they can walk or at an advantage over people with disabilities. Furthermore, I believe that even if these barriers were taken away, and everything was socially even, we would still have disabilities. I would still not be able to walk, and I would still need people to take me to the bathroom, to shower me, to transport me, and to help me eat at certain times. Taking social barriers away is not going to make me any more physically able or disabled than I am right now. Yes, sometimes social barriers make it more difficult for us to have a fulfilled life, but they are not the sum total of what causes our disability. Our disability is very much present on a physical level, with or without social barriers. Moreover, people like Nancy Eisland, who wrote The Disabled God, assert that there are different ways that people can walk. She gives in her book an example of a person who can scoot along on their bottom in a sitting position. Now, I know that some of you will disagree with me, but that is the nature of sharing opinions and ideas on the internet. But scooting along on your bottom, or any alternatives to walking that are not walking, are indeed, or in fact, not walking. They are modes of transportation, or modes of coping with not walking, that I applaud the disabled persons who have worked to get to that level for having achieved. But they are in the end not walking. Furthermore, people like me who have had a physical disability for 34, almost 35 years. My birthday's in March, so in March I will be 35. Will likely tell you, and I would be willing to bet that they would likely tell you, that at one point in their lives, after having dealt with 20 or 30 years plus of having to deal with their disability, I bet that they will tell you that they will have preferred to walk and do the things that able-bodied people can do at one point or another in their lives. And that, to me, is not wrong, but it is only natural that a person would want to have abilities that they don't have. That does not mean that a person has a better life or is better than the person with a disability. It just means that more ability is preferable to less ability. Now, as a caveat, I realize that people with disabilities, because of their perspective, can often understand or do things differently and sometimes better than a person without a disability. But I believe that we can all agree that there are certain things that able-bodied people can do that would be desirable over not being able to do them, and I see no problem with wanting to have those abilities. People like Nancy Eisland and others in the disabled community say that having a disability is preferable to not having one because it allows the disabled person to represent a portion of human diversity that an able-bodied person is not able to represent. I say that my disability may provide me with an opportunity to represent diverse levels of ability or a level of human diversity not represented by able-bodied people. But my disability is certainly not worth it if all the disability does for me is to give me the opportunity to represent that diversity. If that's all the disability does for me, then I would rather not have it. And certainly, I would not like to have it in heaven, which a lot of disabled people claim that they will have their disabilities in heaven, and to want to be cured of the disability or not to want to have it in heaven is wrong. Now, if you would like to have your disability in heaven, I see no reason that Jesus would not allow you to have the disability in heaven, but I would personally prefer not to have the disability in heaven, and I see no reason for which I should not have that opinion. When Jesus resurrected from the dead, he manifested in at least one of his apparitions to the disciples and other people to whom he appeared the wounds that he had experienced on the cross, most commonly referred to as the stigmata. It is the nail marks in his hands and feet, and sometimes the mark on his side. But this was not because he preferred to have the disability or he preferred to be represented as a person with a disability, but in order that people that might not recognize him or did not recognize him, such as Thomas the Apostle, often nicknamed the Doubter, would be able to recognize him at a moment's glance as the Jesus who had suffered and died on the cross for us. In a future episode, I will be talking more about one of the social barriers which I believe is unfair for people with disabilities. But I will end this episode by saying that I do not believe that people who walk put those barriers up in order to discriminate against people with disabilities on purpose. I believe that they are just in place because most people do not have disabilities, or at least physical disabilities, and so it is convenient for the people without disabilities to use some of the structures that they have erected. Could they be any more accommodating to people with disabilities? Certainly, but I do not believe there is some kind of evil conspiracy among walking people against those with physical disabilities. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Joshua T. Lindsey TV. Thank you for listening. I understand that this is a longer episode than most of the episodes, but I believe that I have covered a lot of ground that might be beneficial to you. Thank you, and please subscribe if you would like to see future episodes of Joshua T. Lindsey TV. Have a good day. God bless you.